Alright, so hello everyone. Once again, welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to tackle the basic plan that we're going to follow on this channel, at least for a while. I know I didn't give any directives in the first video. I just mentioned why I opened the channel and some other basic things. Today I want to put in order and make titles of what we're going to do. So just to clarify before starting the video, is that there are already things at hand. I have some characters that I definitely want to put in the story. They are already established, or there are certain personality concepts, or rather character concepts, that I want to put in the story. It doesn't have to be the exact person, but there are certain personalities that I think would make the story less colorful if they were absent. So the first title that we're going to cover, and also the main part that I'm going to give you details about my own story before going into detail on specific titles, is what's already at hand. So these include, just as I mentioned before, pre-established characters. They include themes, so certain philosophical themes that I want to emphasize throughout the story. Maybe certain character tropes, again, may be related to themes. Maybe certain stories that are about themes that I want to establish. And then the overall plot. So I already have certain things that I want to happen, and already happened. There are certain drivers of the story that if that thing doesn't happen, the story just doesn't go. So it just remains where it is, and as you know, the change is necessary in the story, so there needs to be something that makes the characters strive for something. So I need to have this overall plot before even developing the planet itself. That may be controversial to some people. Some people may want to create the world first, all the stars and all the moons and all this stuff, and they want to make all the continents, all the tectonic plates, the density of the planet, everything else. But personally, I would think that writing something that you don't like wouldn't really matter. So instead, I would make some basic characters. I would make like an overall place, maybe a couple countries, a couple nations, and then I would, depending on how the story is going to go and how I want things to go, I would develop the planet according to that. So rather, after developing a certain closeness to what we're dealing with. So yeah, the first thing that we're going to tackle on this channel is going to be what characters I've already established, the themes that I want to emphasize, and the overall plot. The second title that we're going to elaborate on this channel, after talking about what's already at hand, is going to be, as some of you may guess, physical world building. Now, the reason that I'm using the word physical here is because it isn't really related to making kingdoms or making relationships and stuff. So this is going to be the part that includes astronomy, so things like how the planet overall sustains its life. So it may be hotter, it may be colder, it may have more irregular seasons, so maybe more tides, more changes in the atmosphere. People may develop certain different cultures depending on the overall climate. So maybe, for example, the life is going to be really difficult for people in the winter, so they may develop some extra terrifying monsters. So maybe their mythology may be dominated by creatures like Yeti, just an example. Another thing is actually that the physical world building would definitely affect the overall development of their technology. For instance, a point that I heard from Artifixian, again, credits to him for this, is that when a planet, like think about Saturn for instance, when a planet has rings, so we obviously don't have rings on Earth, but if we were to have rings, this would mean that even ancient physicians, even ancient scientists would be able to find out that the Earth is round, that it's revolving around a sun, and they would be able to find out the radius of the planet. And this would lead them on to actually becoming secular in a very early age. The reason you may ask is because, think about it, we used to believe that when you sail too far from your home, you would just fall down. Like, just think about it. So the existence of a ring, something that we should establish in the astronomy section, would highly affect the overall development of the society. Now you may ask how humans are going to evolve in this world. That's a part of the overall plot, so I won't get into that. Other than astronomy, although related, I wanted to give a different title for this, is geology. So after developing the galaxy, its situation, how much time the Earth has existed for, maybe some other life forms around it, solar system of our planet, how far it is, and other stuff. We have to get into, just as I mentioned before, things like, you know, tectonic plates of the continents, how they move, where earthquakes occur and why they do not, how the tides work, how they change. What else? So things like how mountains were formed, where they were formed. For instance, let's say we have a continent like this. I will get into the detail in the other videos, but what you need to know right now is I'm planning an isolated continent that will have the humans inside of it. Because I am planning to put all the humans in a single continent, and I don't want them to leave for a couple thousand years, it may be more logical to put giant mountains all around the continent so they may not leave. Or maybe I can get the moon of the planet closer and make it bigger, like 2 or 3 times, so tides may be huger, so the ships cannot really sail very far away. Or they may be volcanic activity, that's maybe there are some mountains around the main continent I'm planning and there are giant volcanoes. So people are too afraid to leave just in case a volcano triggers an underwater earthquake or something. I will get into that on the later videos. So anyways, another one is spec bio. Now, as I said, I want mostly humans to be on the story. There will be aliens, but for the most part it will be humans. So the reason that I'm putting it here is, let's say that our hypothetical sun was a lot bigger or maybe a lot shinier compared to our sun, and let's say, what if the Earth was closer? So in this case, obviously the humans on the planet would be affected, even though they were the same race as us, even if we were able to breed with them. So maybe if the sun was closer, their skin would be darker. Or maybe if it was more far away, if the planet was colder, their skin may be whiter. What else? Let's say that our hypothetical planet has 1.5 gravitational pull. That would make their bones denser. So if you maybe stumbled upon a couple articles, they say, you know, people can resist up to 10G for 20 seconds or so, but sustained pressure, so if they stay under, for example, let's say 2G or 3G or more, their body starts to deform, or they start to experience heart palpitations, some other health problems. So we need to establish a feasible gravitational pull so that they can survive, but also considering the smallest change in their gravitational pull, their body would still get affected. So we still should check our new people's speculational biology, just in case the planet we create becomes very distinct from ours. I will try to keep it similar, but since even the smallest changes in sunlight or distance from the sun affects our own biology, it would really be beneficial to put spec bio here just in case. And we are going to design aliens on this channel. So my last category on this title is, you may be surprised, altered physics. Or rather, altered physics laws. So I want magic to be on the universe that I'm creating. So I want to get into particle physics or quantum mechanics, just a general idea to see if putting magic is possible or not. I'm not planning like a stereotypical isekai fantasy world, or the kind that you see in D&D, or the ones, you know, everyone you turn up on the street uses magic or creates giant fireballs. No, I'm thinking of something more technical, maybe something related to black holes. Again, I am not informed about this yet, so we'll get into that later. But it is important because I want some sort of supernatural thing happening on the story. Not supernatural per se, but it will be logical. It's just we will see it as supernatural because it's different from the way we perceive the world. Like, for instance, just think about it. We already have some physical laws established, but we cannot really apply them to really big or really small scales. We cannot even figure out how time or space exactly works. So I think some sort of supernaturality, or at least some sort of mysticism in the story would be good. I still want it to be logical, but I want it to still have that mysticism. So I want the viewer to feel that they are in a place that makes sense, but also is still filled with unknown to the brim. So our third and most difficult title to tackle is going to be socio-political world building. This one's going to be similar to what a part of the world building community only does. So there are a part of the community that only establish this section. So they're not really interested in figuring out the exact physical characteristics. They're not really interested in going around the internet and looking for how physics work, how a giant ring around the earth would affect our climate and stuff. So they only establish like a general map where the mountains are, where the forests are or something, and they just go with the narrative instead. They focus on the kingdoms and the motivations of the characters and stuff. So that part of the community may be interested in the last two sections of my title. So this is the third, and there will be a last title after this. The first one to tackle here is history. This is going to include the societies, the ethnicities, the overall politics, so who is in charge in where. This one is going to be pretty long. Not because it's difficult to research, but because it's going to be really long. I have to look for governmental systems, I have to look for some exemplary kingdoms, I have to look for cultures that I'm going to be taking inspiration from, and whether their systems are applicable or not. This is going to be really, really long. The second one is technology. So their development stage, what exactly they developed that for, and also this is connected to the magic system. So we need to establish that first, so that their technology will be integrated into what we already have, and how magic improves upon it or maybe downgrades it. This is probably also going to be very long because I need to again make some research on different ancient Bronze Age technology that disappeared with time, but I will get into the detail on its own dedicated videos. But also, to make a parenthesis here, we are going to develop the number system and their overall science here. So you may think that we would develop this in the constructed language stage, but it's really related to science, so I would instead start with this one personally, or maybe go along with the constructed language. This would include things like what its base is, how it's written. This will also require a really deep research on what to choose, and maybe I can take some inspiration from some of the ancient South American societies that use their own systems. There are some videos on this topic on YouTube right now. I may check them out. And finally, religion and culture. This is going to be the part that interests the world building community the most, probably, because we are going to tackle religion in a very, let's say, Mandela Catalog-esque way. So I want my aliens to be thought as gods, and I want them to be worshipped. I want them to have their own pantheon, and I want them to be aware of it. There are some really fun ideas I'm planning, and ones that I'm not intending to share yet, but I really think this section is going to be really fun because I already have some basic knowledge on the topic, some basic knowledge on Greek mythology, and I also have been reading some other mythology books and have been following a lot of YouTube channels, but we'll see. We'll see whether my knowledge is sufficient to make a basic faith. For the second part, culture. So religion is already a subclass of culture, but I wanted to, put them like this so that I can actually work on them separately. But culture includes, again, still tied very tightly with religion. It includes folklore and myth. It doesn't have to be religious myths, but maybe some, general kids stories. And also, even though it is technically a subclass of culture, I want to put it separately, language. This is going to be one of the most intricate parts and one of the most fun parts, probably. I wanted to put it here because it's going to require some very elaborate work, because we are going to work on the stories and the society itself, but this is going to be where a lot of things go down. So we should write it separately because it's going to be taking very long for us. And I'm not saying it in a painful way, but it's going to be really fun for us to establish all these languages and maybe even take some inspiration or, mixing up languages from our own world. Because of the structure of the story that I'm planning, there will be opportunities within our world on certain times to take an already existing language, so let's say 8th century Latin, and put our own oomph onto it, and we can possibly send some words from our language to Latin, and maybe some words from Latin to our language, or maybe we may periodically put some people from our world onto the real world. We'll see. We'll see. But I am planning some really cool stuff for the language section as well. So we will have some great opportunities to take some actual languages from our world from different times and borrow a couple words or systems. And for the last section, now you may be surprised that I'm putting it separately, but character writing. You may again say that, doesn't this technically get included in the socio-political world building category? But I would say no, because the last one is about the general structure of the societies. It includes giant concepts like history, technology, things that are on a societal level. But in here I'm thinking we should go more detailed. So things like psychology of the characters and their relationships. So all of these is obviously going to require some immense research. Maybe I can ask a couple stuff to experts that I know. But basically, the reason that I'm putting it separately is because it's going to include a lot of, let's say, unique expertise. Because in socio-political part, you don't really need to know about mental illnesses. Well, that would be psychiatry, but you wouldn't still need to know specific people into their very core, into their very personalities, how they behave. Instead, it would be sufficient to get a general idea of who they are in that section. But in here, we're going to go full in. Like, we're going to go into character motivations, their own personal philosophies, who they have been affected by, maybe throw in a couple of psychological theories in there, like how Evangelion used Freudian theories on character relationships. Like, for example, how the partners they seek actually have certain similarities to their parents. I'm just giving it as an example. It doesn't have to be Freudian theories. We can go with some other people, obviously, and we can go with some philosophers. And the sociology is obviously going to tackle the relationships. And for this section, I'm actually planning to make a chart with every single main character on it and their relationship with one another. Let's say we have 6 main characters. I'm thinking of getting into detail as much as possible, and let's say this is person 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm planning on going separately into how they feel about every single person on the chart, and maybe go with the second person, how they feel about every single other person, and with the third one, like this. So I am actually thinking of dedicating a lot of time, especially in this part, because this is essential. Because if their relationships don't work, motivations also don't. So the second part is going to be a natural result of character psychology. So obviously their relationship is going to be formed due to their psychology and is going to be affected by it that way. But if we get relationships part wrong, it's going to ruin the first one as well. So we shouldn't spare any detail in this section that requires the most logical effort. We may actually separate them into different subclasses, put maybe different titles here and study the more detail. But for now, the ones that I am presenting here on this video are my current titles. So I hope you enjoyed the video. As you may have guessed, I already don't really have an established schedule or anything, and I may send some shitposts occasionally. But again, we will see how that goes.